I have an appointment later.
Does work feel meaningless after Moab? Like after you accomplish something like that? Because like I know like if I race an Ironman on Sunday, I'm like, I don't care about my job. I'm like, I just like raced an Ironman. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's important, but it's like, I'm going dressed like this.
Yeah.
I'm not dressed up today.
Yeah.
I have one appointment. And I made this week like that just on purpose.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. All right, ready, start. Welcome back to another video, part of our video series. Welcome back to another video from Mission Multisport. Today we're interviewing Don NIssley, fresh off of his completion, execution of Moab 240. So I lost track of days because of so many days and you probably did too. So when did you actually finish? Was it exactly a week ago on Tuesday?
Oh, it would have been Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay. So we're within a week of Don finishing the race. As we sit here today, you flew back, a couple days ago?
Finished Wednesday, had a day of recovery, flew back Friday.
Yeah, so we wanted to get this video shot while it was really fresh. I think first is, gosh, what an amazing accomplishment. Like, absolutely amazing accomplishment. Lots of, Ben and I have talked about it, lots of other club members, people who are like accomplished long distance endurance athletes, people who have done, 10 Ironman races plus, and they're like, how do you go run 240 miles? So amazing accomplishment, like kudos. I don't know how else to express what an amazing feat you just completed. So
appreciate that.
We want to kind of dive into a couple different parts of the conversation on the race. The first part, training leading up to it, and then dive into talking about the race, and then going through some Q&A that club members submitted. So I'm going to let you guys run the first part because we have coach and athlete, and I'll just be innocent bystander for a little while, but talk about like the training, that Ben, that you set up for Don and that Don clearly executed well leading up to it. Because I think a lot of people sit and think, how the heck do you train to run a 240-mile race?
Yeah, especially for me. So Don and I got together. We're coincidentally neighbors, right? Don lives like a mile away from me. I'm not an ultra runner. I've never coached somebody to be an ultra runner. Sorry if you didn't know that or not.
Too late now.
But I'm very swim, bike, run focused. So when Don and I initially talked, I think I was a little apprehensive or hesitant because it's such a big goal and it's such a challenging event that he was aiming to do. Fortunately, I think Don and I kind of clicked right away, right? And like we kind of trusted each other right away. And I'm not someone who's going to say, hey, this is what we're doing every day. Here it is. You have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this. And in the past, Don had other coaches like that. So I think that's kind of why we got along right away, right? Like I knew Don had ran 100 miles. I never had. Don had ran 100K. I never had. So right away, my mindset kind of shifted from being pretty authoritative towards his training and being very plastic and flexible with it, where I was completely open. Maybe you have a different opinion. I was completely open to Don's feedback and his suggestions. And maybe there was only like one or two times I pulled him back, which I think were at good times of the training cycle, and kind of held him back and said, we're doing a little too much, or you're getting run down, or now's not the time to push. And then there was times where I said, now is the time to push, right? Like if you want to try to run 50 miles as fast as you can, now is the time. So I took it as more of like, I'm here to assess Don's stress, assess his rest, get to know him on a better level than most of my athletes, because Don will just sit, if I say, how you feeling? He's going to say, good, I'm going to go run. And I needed to kind of know him enough to find, hey, when is he being truthful about this, and when is he just push, right? What do you think?
Talk a little bit about, like, I know you guys had an overarching philosophy to the training, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah. So we decided early, and this is how I build anyone's training program for anything, really. We're going from least specific activity to most specific as we get close to the race. So Don and I decided in the spring and early summer, we're going to do big volume. Right, I think we got up to 107 miles of running a week, probably 3 or 4 lifts that same week. Just a lot of aerobic base miles to give him the volume and give him the legs to kind of like get that specificity as we got closer to the race. I had a couple of races in there that Don could kind of use like benchmarks and check marks. And then as we got closer to Moab, we started doing things like hill repeats. We did a lot more hiking, a lot more elevation gain, sauna work. Unfortunately, Don broke a treadmill because he sweated all over it too much, so we couldn't get like the really high elevation grades. And I'm sure he could go to the YMCA and scare people, but he didn't. We added in the Stairmaster to help get a little more elevation. But that was kind of our main theme. And then the day-to-day structure I would build out each week. We would talk every Sunday. We would talk a lot, but like every Sunday we would talk about the training plan for the next week, ask him how he's feeling, and see what we want to do. Which I thought was super important because Don needs to plan his weekends, right? Like maybe he needs to get a running partner to go run with him, or he needs to get a specific location to run, because you can't live in Mertztown and get 5,000 feet of elevation gain in an 11-mile run. You need to go. You need to go somewhere, right? So in order for Don to plan out his weeks and where and when he was going to run, we had to talk and upload, kind of like upload the week together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Don, you jump in obviously training was a long time period, right? But like condense it down, I guess, to what you think worked best, or maybe what didn't work. Like, I don't know.
Sure.
Like, give your summary of it.
Post running the race, I mean, in the moment, everything was going well. I really wanted to have that high volume early because I knew my schedule later gets crazy. Kid things, school starts. So having that specificity later was great because I could easily plan where I was going to be and how I was going to be there. Maybe not so much people coming, but at least on my own, I knew where I needed to go. Talking with Ben through this process has probably been how we got through Moab, actually. Because I have experienced the reason Ben and I think Ben hit on it a little bit was we talked a lot, and the only way I think to get through this race for both of us was to manage where we were. Like, I think I was pretty honest about like, hey, yeah, I could run myself to death, but I really trusted Ben's plan. And if I saw something, I was like, hey, maybe we should adjust this a little bit. There's some things I wish we would have done differently now, or even when we were there, like at the end, we weren't lifting as much. And I felt maybe we should have kept lifting even through that process, but it turned out good. And here I am. So
yeah, you got the buckle, right? So
sure.
Overall, it was successful.
Correct.
So how about, what was like the longest training day that you did leading up to Moab, or was that actually one of those prep races that you did?
Yeah, I'm sure it was Georgia Death Race, right?
No, well, the 110 was probably the 110.
Yeah.
But yeah. That was sort of. That was really early. That was almost too early to affect Moab. But we did the labor pains race where we ended up getting 50 miles, in September. I think that was a huge key to confidence for myself, number one. And then that was like the last big run before Moab.
So talk about how that gave you confidence. Because outsider opinion, right? I look at like, oh, you ran a 50 miler, like you're going to go almost 5 times that. So if it was me, I'm not sure, like, did you feel great even after running 50 miles and that's where the confidence came from, or? Well,
part of it was July, I ran a race and my calf blew up. So like at that moment when that happened, it was like, oh crap, now what do I do? So when I ended up getting to the 50-mile mark at the labor pain race, that's where the confidence was like, okay, my calf is good, my legs are good, my body feels good. I could probably have kept going. I probably could have done 60 miles on that day, but we set a bar of like 35, and I messaged Ben in the race. I'm like, hey, I'm feeling really good. I'd like to keep going. And, right away, Ben was like, yeah, as long, don't blow up. And I was like, cool. So I went to 50. I felt like that was kind of a cap, and it was 5 miles more than I did last year. And when we first got together. So, that's where I think the confidence in my mind was like, okay, came back from an injury, feel great. And so I think, like 50 miles and still feeling pretty strong was where the confidence came in.
Yeah, so why don't you guys talk a little bit about how you worked through the calf injury, right? Because when did that happen? Like, that was in the summer,
Beginning
right?
of July.
Yeah.
So, like, that's, like, not super close to the race, but close enough
It
where
was
you're
close
like,
enough
we
to
got to
be
figure
scary.
this out. Yeah. So, like, how did you guys, work through that?
I was way more scared of that calf injury
I wasn't.
than we talked about.
Yeah.
I know you were.
On the
I know.
last video?
Yeah, oh my God, I hated that last video because he had the calf injury, and I was like, oh my God, like, what if this is something real? What if he, like, ruptured his Achilles or ruptures his Achilles? And, like, and in my brain, I was like, if Don has a serious injury, he can't do this race. And actually, after the last video when we were talking, it kind of clicked to me that, like, Don wasn't thinking that. He was just thinking, how do I do Moab with a ruptured Achilles?
That is true.
And I was like, oh my God. I was like, so we're doing this one way or another.
Yep.
So after that kind of clicked for me, we're like, I'm very injury prevention mindset, right? Like, I want all my athletes to get to the start line as healthy as possible, not overtrained, no niggles, giving their body the opportunity to do what they trained to do. And after I realized that, like, no matter what, Don was doing this, I think I kind of, like, took the kid gloves off a little more than I would with your typical triathlete and kind of, like, let him work through the calf injury in a lot different of ways. You probably saw 2 massage therapists, a physical therapist, a doctor.
I went to the doctor.
I remember you went to the doctor.
And he's like, you need to take a year off.
Yeah.
And I laughed at him.
I can't believe it, yeah.
And I was like,
You should go take the belt buckle into his office and say,
you have no
"Here's
idea.
my year off."
Yeah, I almost did the Goggins thing. Like, you don't know me, son. Like, that is not happening. I am not taking a year
Yeah.
off. Like, I've never heard of anything so dumb. But and it ended up being a strain in the calf where my son and I were out, and part of the process was, instead of doing running, we went hiking. And we went from Jersey to south on the Appalachian Trail, and I stepped up and it released. And my son saw it and he's like, "Hey, Dad, are you all right?" I'm like, I'm not sure. Let's give it a second. And man, every step it got better and better and better. And it was like, yeah, okay, finally it released. Even after 2 massage therapists, a TENS unit on it, some all kinds of anything I could find that would have helped. I tried, and ended up just going out and stepping up on a rock, and then it opened up.
And luckily, we had put so much volume and training in before the injury. Once he was good, we could get right back at it.
It was pretty close.
Right? Like, we didn't have to take a step back and say, oh, well, now we have to do like a 30-mile week or whatever and build back up. It was almost like, okay, now we're back at it. Keep an eye on it. Don't push it. Like, don't hurt it again. But, you're good to push. You're good to go. You're good to train. That was definitely a big hiccup for me.
Yeah, well, also part of is my mistake. Like, I am 100% that it was lack of electrolytes, and then pushing at that race, like, that opened my mind to say, look, you really need to be spot on with hydration from here on out. Like, you can't screw this up. And I think that's one of the things at Moab. Like, I was there last year and I learned that, like, hey, if I don't drink here, I'm going to die, for real. So, like, that's the one thing at Moab that I nailed. Like, I had no issues with hydration. Even I ran out of water in between aid stations through the desert. So, with 4 or 8 miles left, and mentally, I just knew when I got into the aid station, hydrate, keep drinking, and then you're going to be fine. Refill, get back out. And I had, like, that was the one thing I think I nailed perfect at Moab.
We did really tweak your electrolyte and hydration intake after that calf injury.
Sure.
We talked about that
Absolutely.
extensively.
Changed the product.
Yeah, yep.
Everything, just went at it a different approach. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so maybe the calf injury was a good thing in hindsight, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
As dumb as it sounds,
Yeah.
like it really was like, hey, you can't go through this and not have the hydration because it's not going to work that way.
Yeah. You did a very good job of being as dialed as you could on all the little details, right? Like details probably get you through that race at no matter what level you're doing it. Preparation, hydration, nutrition, what you packed, what the amount you packed, the things you had your crew do. You know what I mean? The weight of the pack. Like, I don't think you left any stone unturned with the small details in that. And that's a huge credit to you because I didn't help with that. I wasn't telling Don what shoes to wear, when to change his socks, blisters, Vaseline. I didn't do any of that. Like, I helped Don create the plan, execute the plan, but like, we didn't even really talk about your mentality. You know what I mean? Like, that's not really something that I feel like is in the triathlon coaching wheelhouse. And that's something that Don probably had better people to help him with, right? Like, I'm not married to Don. You know what I mean? Like, his wife is a better therapist to him than I am. So, like, when he's coming up with how he needs to mentally get through that race, which I'm sure we'll talk about, I really didn't. I tried to stay in my lane for that. You know
It was
what I mean?
great. I mean, there were certain things we discussed.
Yeah.
You know, not so much like.
But as an athlete, we discussed.
Right, the athletic part of it,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I think that's, as in my opinion, what your conversations and my conversations were like. Hey, this is the kind of thing. Like, if you're in an Ironman, you're pushing through this. Like, yeah, I get that. Okay, that's helpful. Later in the race, when I was out there, like some of that did come into play. Like we're going to find a way to get through this. Like, and I think that was, you know, especially with the injury and like with the injury, we didn't go like crazy about like, oh, it's the end of the world. We were like, okay, we have an injury. How do we manage that?
Yeah.
No different than being at Moab and going, I had an injury in Moab, and okay, now how did I get through that? Listen, I was quitting. I mean, I have a device. I could be anywhere. I messaged my wife and said, I'm done. Like, this pain is unbearable. I'll get into that more, but
yeah.
Yeah,
so I mean, let's dive into the race, right? Because we're starting to go there already.
Yeah, I think that's good on the training. I mean, I feel like unless there's anything else you want to like put a bow on the training topic, I think that was a nice.
As far as pre-training, no. Like anything but post-race, we can talk about we could do differently after the race.
All right, so let's dive into the race then. So you start at 6 p.m.
No, 5 noon. You start at noon.
Okay. Yeah, I'm confusing it with Grindstone. All right, so you start at noon on Friday?
Correct.
Yeah, gosh, I don't even know where. I'll let you like run with the mic, right? Like, so obviously, do you get a good night's sleep the night before? I guess that's a good question to start with. Or are you so keyed up that not really?
No, so like I'll go even back a little farther. Like 2 months prior, my anxiety started to build. And like the month before is the worst anxiety I've ever had in my life to this race. And that's when volume starts coming down, right? So now you're doing a little less volume. You can't burn off that anxiety. And now the anxiety is building. Once race day came, I was like as calm as a cool cat. Like there could be like whatever you wanted to come and attack you, whatever it was happening, didn't bother me. My crew, on the other hand, I could watch them and their anxiety was off the charts. So it was kind of neat to be like, yeah, tomorrow's race day, no big deal. Like we're gonna go and get it done.
Can I say something?
Oh, sure.
So throughout the training, Don used to text me every day. We would talk every day. And then like once like mid-September hit, it was like less and less and less and less and less. I was like, oh man, like I know he's getting nervous.
He doesn't want
I know he's getting scared. So I'd have to like message him and be like, hey, how you doing, buddy? Like, how we feeling? You feel good? But like it was like less and less and less as the anxiety went like up and up and up. And I can't tell you how many times I like opened my phone and was like, I gotta check in. I was like, nope. Like let him go through his process. Like I'm not his mom. He doesn't need me like checking in on him. Like Don has taught me more than I've ever known about ultra running and this sport. So like, let him go. But I thought it was funny to like see the communication on your end get like decline.
It dropped off pretty hard.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I got sleep. So something I tried at the Georgia Death Race was it worked, and I tried it for the PA 110 that I did, or the Cherry Spring 110, and it was okay there. But I did it here at Moab, and it was wonderful. So like a couple hours before I take 3 of the Advil, Aleve, whatever you want, PMs, and I don't take pain medicine like any other time of my life. So like that hits me and knocks me out. I get 10 hours of sleep prior to the start. So like that's how well it works.
And when did you fly out there? What day?
Oh, so that's different. I flew out the Friday before because I wanted to get some acclimation. I ended up going to a friend's house in Colorado. We did some running in Colorado, got some vert out there. First time I hit 10,000 feet of elevation was out there with him. And then Tuesday the crew flew in, and I drove in because that's when the cabin and stuff was open for me.
All right, and before we forget, let's give your crew credit, right? So who's out there with you crewing for you? Because I think these people.
Sure, I had a crew of crews, so you couldn't have asked for a better crew. Obviously, my wife was there. My son was there. She was crew chief. Jacob was the assistant to her. Then I had my best friend Brett out. He was the crew chief in between, and I'll get into some of that detail. But I thought it was going to be harder. Like the way that crew comes out normally to a race is you go crew stop, and I thought it was going to be faster. So having 2 crew chiefs, one who does one session, and then once they hit that crew spot, they hit the next crew spot, and then she was supposed to come back, and Brett was coming out to do the crewing so she could get a break. But it ended up being like 12 hours in between crew stations. So the farthest drive, I think, was 2.5 hours to crew, and then it got closer, the way the race was set up. So that's probably something I would have changed is had one crew chief and like my wife and Jacob, and there every time. That's the way it would have went. Then I asked a couple of people, and I think the crew that you get is the crew you're supposed to have. So fortunately, I asked Sam, and she's an incredible runner. She's done some incredible races. She's done well at Eastern States. She's the first blacklist girl doing the Pennsylvania Triple Crown and then the Black Forest race. So she was the first blacklist runner there. And she said, yeah, I'm going to do it. And then that but word comes up, and you're like, oh, but what? She goes, but Rhoda has to come. Well, Rhoda's an incredible woman where she just ran the Route 6, which is 400 some miles for fun. So like Rhoda is that elite runner, and you're just like, okay, how do I say no to this? So yeah, let's have everybody come on. So part of the anxiety was, okay, now I have 2 completely badass women on my team. I can't let them down, number 1. Number 2, I don't want to let coach down. I don't want to let my wife down. Like, we spent a lot to get here. We can't screw this up. So once I had them on board, and they were phenomenal. Like, I set it up. Sam had an interest of possibly running Moab, so I'm like, okay, let's book Sam first. She had the most mileage.
And this is as pacers.
As right? Pacers, yeah. So these are Sam and Rhoda were just supposed to be pacers. They ended up help crewing, but I think that's just the nature of ultra running. Like if you're there and you're not beat up, then you help at the crew spots. So Sam was pacer 1, then Rhoda was pacer 2. Brett was in the middle, and then Rhoda really jumped right back in again, and then Sam to the finish. And I couldn't have set that up any better, because when I needed Sam in the beginning, like that's when all the feels and the emotions and, man, this stuff is hard and I want to quit, and she happened to be there.
And let's quantify at the beginning, because
sorry.
Because that's how many miles in?
6 66 miles in.
Okay.
I'm
at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it doesn't
You
start.
already ran 2.5 marathons, right? But at the beginning.
Yeah, but the race doesn't start till after 140 miles.
Yeah.
So, so that's, she hit the first 40 some miles, and then each aid station was about 15 miles apart. But we hit the desert, we hit a lot of desert, a lot of sand, a lot of a friend last night, moon powder, like it was like dust, but as soon as you touched it, it was like floating up everywhere. That was probably the second worst thing of doing Moab. And then Rhoda got the mountains. So when Rhoda came in, she was pretty much maybe we talked a good bit, but there was no nonsense. I'm here to do a job, and this is the job I'm doing, and I love that part of it. And then unfortunately Brett got the 30 miles of flat road. I think we had maybe 200 feet of gain, 200 feet of gain in all of that. That was the second worst part of Moab, was that flat road versus the desert. Then Rhoda came back in for the next mountain section, and then Sam to the finish.
And what kind of mileage, just ballpark, did each one of your pacers log? I mean, some of them got some heavy mileage.
Sam must have done 70 miles, right?
Almost 80 miles probably for Sam, but she was early, so that was the other nice part. Like, I booked Sam early, and then she had 30, 60, 90 miles worth of break, which is 3 days. So then she came back in for the end. Now, listen, that's still... You're walking, so it's still brutal time out there. But
she went on a couple training runs in between.
Oh, she has, yeah, she did, absolutely. But yeah, that was kind of the concept.
Yeah, that does bring a different element to it, though, right? When all these people are flying out there to help you. I guess in some ways maybe it's extra pressure, but it's also a little extra, like, maybe positive motivation, right? To, like, hey, these people invested this time. I want to do this for myself, but I also want to do it for them, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I wanted to get to the finish, but I also didn't let anybody that helped me down.
Yeah.
But I did get to a point. I mean, there was a point where the injury part that happened in Moab is early. I got blisters. And I screwed that up. So one of the things somebody was mentioning, like, here, I can run 60 miles in a pair of socks and a pair of shoes and not change them. Moab, that's not the case. Like, change your socks every aid station. Powder, in this case, Moab, I used powder. East Coast, I would have used some sort of a liquid lube because we have water. Well, out there, I don't want that lube to attract any of the sand or dirt and then grind my feet to death. Where I had blisters, but in hindsight, if you're going to end up doing Moab, you want to put that powder on your feet and in your sock. So shake it in your sock and then put your sock on after you put it on your feet, and change every aid station. Change your socks. You don't have to change shoes. I had a pair of shoes on, and then I changed into a pair of shoes and never took those shoes off until I finished. So once I got the blisters under control, I never had another blister. I did have medics look at my feet. That's the first time that ever happened. And they were wonderful. I'm glad they were there.
And the medic was Natasha, who's from around here,
correct.
Right?
Yeah, Thor, nicknamed Thor. I actually saw her early, and I was like, I am not having her look at my feet just yet. Probably a mistake on my end. She probably would have helped me sooner. Like, hey, Don, dummy, what are you doing? You need to be doing this, and this. And I probably should have done that, but I guess a little bit of pride was like, it's a tiny little thing. It won't be that bad. And then it ended up being bigger than $50 by the time I got to the medic, and he was able to take care of it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a whole new element to the ultra running, like just the feet maintenance, right? Like, to make sure that you keep your feet in good shape. Whereas in triathlon, even if you do an Ironman, I mean, if you start to get blisters in the marathon, you just like, whatever.
Yeah, you'll be fine in a couple hours.
Yeah, I'm going to finish it. And you can't get away with that. So I had an experience like about a month ago where I helped crew / pace for one of my buddies at Grindstone, which seems like this little short event, but he still ran 100 miles. And I was 82 to 92, so it was kind of, I got to see him like in a bad spot. And he's a very good endurance athlete. And he was late getting to the aid station where we were, where I was waiting for him, hours. But none of the trackers worked, so we had no idea kind of where he was, and I had to get there early. But he was like apologetic. I'm like, dude, I'm here for you. And I know he felt some of that, like, I need to finish this race, for all the people that supported me. But it's cool, just like that. It's community, right? And it's amazing. I'm sure your crew felt like it was amazing to watch you persevere, and I felt the same way when I was with Brent.
That pressure is a good thing, right? Like, athletes can have this mindset that feeling pressure is bad, right? And you want to be relaxed and calm and in this like flow state, but not wanting to let your family, your crew, and your friends down is a good thing for athletes to have, right? Like, it's good.
It's part of life too,
yeah,
right?
Exactly,
like, you're a dad, like your kids, wife want to eat, go to college, whatever, have a roof over their head, like. So, yeah, I think there can be...
There's no easy way out.
It's kind of the same, not the same, but there are parts of, like, if you're doing an Ironman, a bunch of friends are tracking you.
Yes.
It's like, that's somewhere deep down inside you think about that. This is like, they're not tracking you, they're literally next to you.
But that was one of the big worries, is the tracking, like, and knowing that you guys were all going to be, like, hounding, watching, like...
refresh.
He's only 2 miles farther. It's been 4 hours. What's going on here?
Caroline kept being like, he didn't move. He didn't move this hour. And I'm like, well, he's probably sleeping, or like he's like resting. Like, it's okay. Like,
or the tracker's not working. Yeah. Because it would only refresh every, like, I think you had to, like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like the tracker, you had to hit a new aid station. It was like certain checkpoints. Checkpoint for it to update.
Yeah, that part I don't know.
It was wonky. It was wonky for sure.
Yeah. I would like go to bed and then wake up the next morning and refresh. I'm like, he's still moving.
Yes. So I totally forgot. Like, once I was in it, I didn't think about the tracking at all. Other than my crew was like, hey, we got here, we were a little early because we looked at the tracker and then we could estimate about when we thought we were going to be here. Because I have charts that I made, like, a goal time was this, and I didn't make that, and then the next goal, I wasn't on time. I was sort of on time early, and then that went away, and then I was ahead of my personal, my third, like, this is where I want to be before cutoffs. And
were you at? Well, the cutoff for the race was 117 hours.
Yeah, it's
like 5 days, basically.
16:59, 69. Like, it's 117. Like, if you're not across the line, it's over.
Were you at all at risk of the cutoffs, or not really?
Mentally, I was. Like, when I'm out there, I was going, so you said about your friend being sorry, like, for, like, that last half, I probably told Rhoda and Sam, I'm sorry, I'm so slow. Like, I really expected I was going to be faster than this. And they were like, what do you mean sorry? Like, you have plenty of time. Like, you don't, like, if your crew's not, I think at some point, if you don't have an expectation of your crew telling you, like, hey, you're this hour, you're crushing this goal, you're going to beat this time. You as the runner, or in my case as the runner, I was constantly thinking, like, I'm not going to make it. It's dark. It's Wednesday. Not thinking that it was Wednesday at midnight. It was Wednesday 8 o'clock. Like, the sun's coming up or 7 o'clock. The sun's coming up any second now. That's sort of the little mind game that I think that happens to you when you're out there. But as far as backing up a little bit about the injury, I had a toenail that I didn't know it was the toenail at the time, but every step I took, it was like somebody was sending bamboo shoots up my nails every step. And it was like, I was done. I messaged my wife and I said, I'm done. Like, I can't do this. This pain it's too much. And then she messaged Sam and said, hey, get Donnie some sleep. So I was laying there and I was having that inner battle where I kept saying to myself, like, I messaged the crew, like, we're going to find a way. And me just giving up, like, how is that finding a way? That's just not finding a way. That's just giving up. So I ended up falling asleep. I woke up, I went and saw the medic, and it was really kind of dumb of the person because all my toes, she's like, yeah, they all look great, but the one toe that was taped, she's like, I'm not taking that tape off. I'm like, well, okay, but why not? Because that's the one that's apparently hurting. And they were afraid to take that tape off. So I'm like, all right, Sam, I got myself jacked up here. Let's go. What's the worst that can happen?
So what where is this? Just ballpark mileage?
Only a mile 100.
Okay.
I was only 100 miles in.
And they were worried about taking tape off because they maybe thought the toenail was just going to come
off
with it?
So something I learned is that they don't want to pull the tape if there's a blister and then make that blister open.
Yeah.
And so she was worried that there was a blister under there. It was far worse than that, actually. When Sam and I got down the road, I took the tape that was on there. It was just KT tape. I took that off, and the toenail was attached to the tape and to my toe yet. So there's only one choice you have, and that just was like that game you play of 1, 2, 3. I don't know, 3. But you end up tearing it at 2. Like it was like 1, 2, and I just thought I was going to pass out. There's a cliff behind us, and I was sitting. Like if I would have gone backwards, that would have been bad. Sam was not too happy because there's a little bit of blood because you rip the nail off the skin. But she thankfully had some KT tape on her, and I just put some tape on it, and we took it easy to start. And then I never had that pain again.
So did you do something like at a future aid station? Did you do something about that toe? Like beyond that, or did you just leave? You put fresh tape, you rip the nail off. It makes me cringe a little bit. And then you put fresh tape on. Was that it for the rest of the race?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, until I saw Natasha at I think it's Road 46. That's really the last time I saw a medic too. Like when she looked at my.
Where is that mileage wise? Just ballpark.
I'm not sure. I'm
high 100s.
Oh, it had to be.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like
before 200?
Might have been right around the 200
Okay.
mark.
All right.
Yeah. No, Geyser was 200, so it was the aid station, I think, before Geyser. So, it was been
so high 100s.
Yeah.
That's a good move on your crew. Like when you message your wife.
Oh, she's much smarter at that point than I am.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And you say, hey, I'm done. And she doesn't say, well, I'm proud of you anyway. You did really well. This is a hard thing to do. She said, Sam, make this dude sleep.
Yeah.
And then see how he feels. Like, good on Becky. Like, the real hero of that moment is her, right?
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
Like, that's a good... You must have talked about it to the point where she was tired of hearing you talk about it. But, like, did you practice that? Like, did you guys say, hey, unless there's a bone sticking out of my body, you don't listen to the nonsense I'm saying, and you get me forward.
So she was my crew at World's End, and I was pushing at World's End at that time. And I came into dry run. It's crazy, but I don't know what was going on, but every muscle in my body was just shaking. And I said to her, I don't know what I can do here. I don't know how I can go on. And she's like, I agree. I think you should stop. And so we DNF'd World's End. Went back to the cabin, showered, laying in bed, and my watch beeps, like when I wanted to finish. And I popped up, and I went, how much time did I have left? And so that was an error on both of our parts. So this was very specific. Unless I have 3 bones sticking out, I'm not quitting. Like, if I have a broken bone, I'm going to hobble to the finish. Yep. If whatever it is, we're going to find a way to finish this race. And so she thankfully took that to heart, and we all learned from that World's End DNF, like, okay, we have time, so let's use that time to our advantage. If it takes me a little longer, I'm sorry, crew, but it's going to take me longer.
Yeah, I highly doubt that they were counting hours at that point. So
yeah.
So you guys have rehearsed that, you and your wife, like, hey, if I get to this place, unless there's a significant health risk, you tell me, like, you find a way to encourage me to move forward, essentially. Or take a break, right? Because the time, based on what you're saying at World's End, was like, hey, I'm shaking, shivering, why didn't I take an hour nap or something?
I think it's even having the right person to talk to, right? Because, like, I know, like, if I'm like dying in an Ironman and like really in the box, like I don't want to see Caroline, because like I see her and I'm like, oh my god, I just want to be done.
Oh, no, that was a lot of times.
Right? But like if I see like Brian or Rich or you, and you guys are like, dude, like get your shit together. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I got to get my shit together. Like I can do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like seeing that, like seeing somebody you love is hard almost. Where it's like, man, she's dry and warm and happy. I can be dry and warm and happy
a cup of coffee.
Yeah, like she's been having mimosas since noon. What's going on? Maybe that's just my wife.
That's like Ironman Maryland. That's hard because you run through that bar section and everyone's like just drinking beers, and you're like, damn.
What am I doing to myself?
Yeah.
That's smart though.
Yes, but we rehearsed it, and
Exactly.
you know, like you have to. If your spouse is coming, they need to show you the tough love. There's no way around it, and you have to accept the fact that you talk about that way early a lot of times. Because I was out there, I'm going, I could be on vacation with my wife. Why am I here? Like, I would have more fun on vacation with my wife and family.
For about 3 hours, and then you'd start getting restless.
Yeah, but at least I'd be on vacation, and you know, we could go do something. But I wouldn't be out here with 2 hours of sleep or 4 hours of sleep in 3 days. Like,
yeah, and how would you keep your pants up now, right? You need that belt. Keep your pants
that's
up.
actually very true. I have to go find my belt, but
What was it like having your son out there? Because I know you had said sometimes you would look at him and you'd see like that, oh my God, my 15-year-old son, or however old he is concerned about me. You know what I mean? Like seeing the concern in his eyes must have affected you in some way.
yeah, it could make me cry right now. So Jake did amazing. So he literally, like, you could, when you come into the aid station and you feel like crap, and you obviously look like crap because everybody's face is like, oh my god, what is going on? And so yeah, like I think Jake was more so worried and I'm speaking for him, but obviously Dad didn't look all that great, but I think I was pretty coherent through the whole thing. Like there wasn't a moment where I think I was delusional, and I think the crew would be on point with that as well, because we did talk about that a little bit. I mean, I was low, but I was never to the point where I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know when I came into the aid station things that needed to happen, what I wanted. And I think this is really the first time as an older kid that Jake got to see like Dad's really in a low spot, but not like so low. I like all the emotions I think were left out there. But when I came into the aid station, I was coming in to get sleep. So that's the other thing. Scheduled sleep stops were when I saw my crew. We were looking at about a 2-hour sleep. Probably could have done less, but I think 2 hours was perfect for what I wanted to accomplish. And then a burger with ketchup and nothing else. Like if they had a burger and ketchup, it was the best burger you had at that aid station, and it was better than the last one you just had. So as far as fueling goes, that's really what I ate. Everything stayed down. I had no gut issues. I had no issues in that regard. Some of the other runners, very early before second aid stage, before Massivac, they were having massive gut issues, and I just didn't understand. Like it's too early for that, in my opinion. So
yeah, do you think that's heat, nerves?
Yeah.
What's the elevation there? Like I should know this, but like, is it a higher elevation or not really?
Where you start?
4,000, like 4,000 feet. It's not terrible.
You feel it at 4,000, but not significantly, right? And Don was out there, I don't know,
a week. 4 days,
yeah,
5 days
that's
early.
Close to enough. And you were at higher elevation.
Oh, we were much
before
higher.
That.
Yeah, we were at 7,000.
Yeah, Colorado.
I felt that like for 2 days I had a massive headache.
Yep.
Just kind of like, okay, research, okay, elevation, height, what do I do here? And it's like, it should go away. If you really feel bad, take a pain pill. And I'm like, I don't want it. I don't like doing that. So
At what point during that race did you say to yourself, I'm doing it, it's over, this is done? Was it when you crossed the line? Was it 2:20? Was it like, did you know you were going to accomplish?
when I was going to, not until the last 4 miles.
4 miles?
Seriously.
Because I remember on the tracker.
Maybe 5, because It's when you leave the last aid station, Porcupine, it's like flat. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like if you're on the Appalachian Trail and you're doing Knife's Edge, imagine that for the last 40 miles or 36 miles. It's like that rock, and you're on that rock for all that time, and you're just getting off these freaking rocks.
Like it's technical rocky, or
it's a mix of both, but it's that flat. It's that take that rock and make it flat, and then you're running on that rock all the time. Like it's just constant rock.
So it's not a nice soft trail.
Yeah.
Oh no, the mountains were the best. They were the softest. They were the most scenic. Sort of the conversation was why did I do this race? Is because of those mountain sections. I really thought there was more mountain than there was going to be desert, and it ended up being like 95% desert and 5% mountains at the end of it. But that Porcupine section, we did that. We ran up the finish from the rail trail up for about 40 miles on the last shakeout run, and we ended up getting to the spot and sat in this rock and all this jazz. And coming down Porcupine, we ran into a guy, and he's like, "There's no way out. Like, it just keeps on going. There's no end." And we're like, "Well, there's got to be an end because we were on this section a little bit." But night versus day is like you can't explain how different everything looks. And when you're at 130 some miles, things start appearing. So I didn't really hallucinate a whole lot, which was great until I hit the bike path. But we got to a section, and Sam and I was like, "Sam, I need a minute here." And I happened to look up, and I'm like, "Oh, dude, we're gold." So when we did that training run, I sat up in one of the rocks, and we literally stopped at that spot. When I looked over, and I'm like, I sat in that spot. Sam, we're almost done. And then it was elation after pretty much that.
That's cool.
But didn't really know I was going to finish until I hit the bike path.
Yeah.
Like even though I knew where we were, it still was a little ways to the bike path.
I think you hit like 140, and I texted Spencer, and I was like, he's got it. 100 to go, he's got it. And I knew once you ran long enough, you could get yourself into like Dawn mode, where all that mental shit was out of your brain, and it was just Terminator. You know what I mean? And then I knew when you hit, I think it was like 220, I texted him again, and I was like, he has enough time where he has 20 miles, he needs to go like 0.8 mile an hour for the next 20 miles. I was like, if he breaks his leg, he's crawling, and he's going to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Along that time period, like I think Caroline, we had our little Facebook chat going on where we were posting about you, and Caroline's like, after you hit 200, she's like, he's in the home stretch. Yeah. And I'm like, home stretch is like a marathon and a half still left. Yeah. So I'll ask you the question that I think you thought Ben was asking. Like, when did you think you were done? Meaning, like, I'm out. How many times was that, or was it just the one time when your wife was like? Oh,
just that. Well, that's not exactly true. The real, like, I literally was done. Like, I checked out, and I'm like, I'm just gonna take a nap. I'm gonna wake up and then get the vehicle, take it home. But then when I was laying there, I was like, you really posted out there that like we're gonna find a way, and this wasn't finding a way. But multiple times throughout, I'm like, you're just like, this is so dumb. Why am I here? Like, I could be on vacation. I could be doing, a million other things. But once we hit the mountain sections, that all went away. It was like, oh, this is so gorgeous.
What mountain range was it?
Well, we hit the Shea and LaSalle mountain ranges. So you hit two different ones. And that's the other neat part. Like, I have a picture now that I took, and we're start of the race, and we're going to those mountains, and it's like forever away. Like, you can see the outline. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. We're going to those mountains. It's like when you drive to the Rockies, and the Rockies never get closer. Yeah. And you're like, when am I ever going to get to these mountains? But once we got there, it was gorgeous. It was cool weather. The weather was better for me. Speaking of, it's very warm in here again, but I didn't want to make it put the air conditioner on and freeze. So, but yeah, no, it was like Geyser was the coldest of all of the race. We left, and like the next 2 days, or that Friday, they were sweeping to pick up the ribbons, and it was snowing. And I would have been like, man, if it was snowing in this race, that would have been the icing on the cake for me.
You'd want a tank top.
I would have been in heaven in that case. But.
So what was so obviously there was sections where it was hot and you're just shorts and whatever, a t-shirt. What was the most amount of clothing that you had to put on during the race?
Geyser. I definitely had, first time I had to wear my puffy coat. I had a pair of pants on. That was actually a mistake. I shouldn't have put the pants on, but
because
I got warm very quickly. But the puffy coat, you definitely needed something to get started, because that's back up to that. When I came into Geyser, that was Rhoda's last section, and she got right up and she's like, "Listen, you got an hour to sleep, and then you got to shuffle the rest of the way. If there's a place to shuffle, you shuffle." And I took that to heart, because how do you not listen to Rhoda? And
let's mileage stamp this again. Where's Geyser at?
200.
Okay.
200.
Yeah. So the last 40 miles, and we did that. So there was a section I thought we were running, and I was probably doing a 16-minute pace, but it felt like running, and it was daylight yet, so it was easy to see, not step on the rocks, But once the nighttime came, that running kind of went away because I couldn't see very well. Even though I had a waist light and a headlight going, it just became very challenging to see at that point in the race.
Yeah. The pacer's responsibility almost is to hold you accountable and push you, right? Especially towards the end.
If you're facing cutoffs, absolutely. Yeah. But if you have time, I don't know that, and that was one of the discussions with my pacers, Laura. Listen, if we're having a rough time, don't yell at me because I'm going to shut down. But if we're doing good, a little positivity goes farther than saying, Don, you need to run, or you have to run, you have to do this. Hey, I think we need to pick up the pace is way better than yelling at your runner. That's the worst you could do.
And I assume in her mind she wanted to get you through this before dark, right?
Well, that was kind of my goal. I wanted to get down Porcupine in the daylight.
Yes.
Unfortunately, that didn't go as well. But hey, we got started in Porcupine. It got hot again. That's the other part. We were sitting at Porcupine aid station, and someone's like, "It's 5:00." And the bell was like, "Oh no, it's 5:00. We have 2 hours of daylight. Sam, we need to get moving."
Yeah.
So that was kind of the key. We were sitting there I wasn't paying attention as close to time. I was eating, trying to get food in, trying to hydrate because we ran out of water. There was literal blacktop road sections. And that at the end, when the heat came out, that was brutal. That was worse than almost being in the desert, was that radiant heat off the blacktop. And then running out of water, I went through a 2-liter bladder and then 2 milliliters bottles up front. I went through all of that before we got to the aid station, at that last aid station again. So trying to get in there, trying to hydrate, get everything ready to go. Then I heard someone was like, "Hey, it's 5:00," and it was the bell went off. Oh my, I didn't pay attention enough.
So when you knew you were going to do it, the last 4 miles, what does it feel like running or getting through those 4 miles and then crossing the finish line? When whatever it took, hour, right? Were you just still so process focused and kind of mentally straight as an arrow, or were you kind of taking in the last really decade of your life, right? That you've been essentially working towards this goal. And then crossing the finish line. That must have been this weight off your shoulders and relief and joy and happiness.
Honestly, it was not that for me. So we got to the last 4 miles and we tried to do the run, shuffle, run, walk. But I'm competitive yet, even at that stage. So we heard people behind us and I'm like, "Sam, turn your lights off." She's like, "What are you talking about? It's moon's bright as day. You could see everything." I said, "Turn your lights off." She's like, "Why?" I said, "Because if they see where our lights are that are behind us, they'll know how easy they can catch us. So if they don't see lights ahead of us, then they don't know that we're here. So they're not going to push as hard. So we don't have to push as hard."
Attaboy.
And she's like, that's really smart. I'm like, so I was still with it even at the last 4 miles. I'm like, dude, I don't want somebody to get ahead of me at this point in the race. I still want to try and do okay here. And but I think I left all that, that emotion out on the course, that by the time I got to the finish, it was a little underwhelming. I was glad I was done, don't get me wrong, but like there wasn't this moment of like I fell on my knees, I was crying, I was like ecstatic to be done. I was just like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. Literally, this like,
yeah, dude.
And then laughing, like I'm ecstatic that I'm done, but like at the end of the day, it was like, this really was the dumbest thing you've ever done.
It's almost like you had expended all your emotional energy already.
Oh, I did.
And like at that point, it was just like,
we're done. Like
yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
Like there was times where we were out there, and I would turn around at that step and give it the old salute, and like I never need to see you again because I'm never coming back. And like that was also uplifting. Like I don't need to see you that step again. Yep. Like this section, I'll never see again. So like it was like eventually it was like that was the fun part. It was like goodbye spot. I don't need to see you.
All right, so let's do kind of like highs and lows. So what was the absolute high point during that 240 miles for you? Because it sounds like it wasn't the finish.
Oh, the mountain sections, like getting into Monticello or the Shea Mountains. Like we had, like there was no climb here that was like that. It was amazing.
From a just grandeur and like
the
aesthetics of it?
No, the difficulty of it.
Okay.
So like this is where I'm at. Is like going to Blue Mountain and running those hill repeats, that was hard. But doing this was all of those repeats in one climb. And that's the part that I enjoyed was that hard climbing, and it was daylight, so I could see everything. And you can't imagine the picture that is in your mind of the mountain that goes up high that has no trees, but down below has the aspens in color, the pines are there and the aspens glowing, and you try to take a picture and it doesn't come out and do justice of what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Like that was the high were those pictures that we tried to take. The low obviously was I think it's the Islands aid station, just being so low that I was ready to be done.
And let's mileage stamp that. Where's that at?
Well, the low was at mile 100,
okay.
And then the Shea Mountains were. I can look to be specific. But,
yeah, it doesn't.
Maybe 150.
Okay.
160.
All right. So throughout the race, did you sleep at every single aid station?
No, just the crew spot. So like,
okay.
I had my. I think there was times they could have crewed every spot, but I had them skip like every other one. So if the crew was here, they skipped this one and came to this one. And I think that was every 30 miles was a 2-hour sleep.
Okay.
Which was
and
about
was that
12 hours.
That was the most that you slept was just 2-hour blocks, like never longer? Or
no, never longer.
Okay.
No, never longer. First time I took a dirt nap was at Moab. That was actually fun because I've never slept on a rock that felt as comfortable as a pillow.
I saw that picture on Facebook. We might need to use that picture on like the YouTube.
Yeah, like the thumbnail.
Yeah, the thumbnail. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was like they joked with me, friends that were like, "Hey, you're just gonna one Mississippi, you're gonna be asleep." And it literally was like I was so tired. Like I put my head down and I was like, one Mississippi, I was out. And then they didn't even like 15 minutes was kind of like the cap of where I wanted to be sleeping, and I woke up in 7, roughly about every time. So it was like a 7-minute nap, power nap, got up and was able to go again. And that was actually.
And that's on the trail. That's on the trail.
Yeah, that's on the trail.
Okay, so whoever were you with a pacer when you're doing your rock sleeping?
Yeah, I waited. Like that was the other weird thing. Like people were sleeping that first night, and I'm going, it's way too early to be sleeping. How are you so tired? Like, you didn't even get 5 hours, 6 hours in, and you're sleeping. So that was really odd to me and freaky too, because you're walking along and you see people sprawled out all over rocks, and you're like, wow, this is weird. And but then later it was like, oh, that rock felt like a bed, and it was so comfortable.
Did your pacers help you with nutrition and hydration reminders when they were with you? Okay, so you were all
No.
good.
Yeah, because I mean, it's in. I have this booklet. It's like everything. Like crew do this, and this, and when they followed it, everything went smooth. If they didn't follow it, things were a little chaotic. But for the most part, I had a drop bag at every aid station. Just if I missed my crew, I at least had my hydration and some nutrition if I was eating. So like that's the only thing I didn't do early was the socks. Like I didn't pack enough socks early and take a spare sock with me with the foot powder. That was something. If there was something that I would change, it would definitely be that. Like. And I never wore a pair of shoes as long as I did. I never took my shoes off either when I was sleeping. I left them on because I was worried that my feet would swell out of my shoe, and then I couldn't get my foot back in my shoe. So like if that's one tip, like don't worry about dirtying up whatever you're doing, because having a swollen foot you can't get back in your shoe is worse than having a dirty vehicle.
And you wore the Ultra
I wore
Wilds?
the Ultra Wilds. I wore the I think if I had done it again, I would have stayed in the Topo Ultra Ventures, the Ultra Venture 3s. They were more cushiony throughout, but I got that in my head like, okay, I got the blisters in these things. I switched right away into the Ultra Wilds. Unfortunately.
So did you wear the Topos
first
early in the race?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do most ultra marathoners or ultra runners wear the same brand of shoe the whole way through, or is it normal to switch?
So I don't know that answer what other ultra runners do, but in my case, the Topos had like a little curl in the heel, and when I did the 110. I thought that was the issue. It was the mountain racers that I wore at the 110.
Okay.
But those curled harder. The Ultra Wilds were more straight up, so like it didn't curve into my heel.
Like your Achilles, basically.
Correct. And I didn't want to have that issue again, so I was like, I'm not even going to take the chance. I just put on the Ultra Wilds. I had 2 pair with me. I wore 1 pair from that third aid station, or the Indian. I think it was Indian.
So you wear that 1 pair of shoes for like lots and lots of miles.
Yeah, 200 miles. Just under 200 miles.
Okay.
But they're trash. They didn't even come home. Because I think the one ding I would say on those shoes is they don't hold their cushion as well. Once they're out, and it's unfortunate, but it's just how I noticed when I wore them to train.
All right.
You want to take a couple questions?
Yeah, let's get some Q&A. You want to?
Yeah, so a couple of our members asked some questions. I'll pull up. As I'm pulling it up, I'll ask you one, because this was going through my head the entire prep and before the race. Honest answer, what odds did you give yourself going into this? Because it can't be 100% because of the randomness of Moab, right? Like, it can't be I'm 100% doing this, because you could, fall and crack your head open and shit could happen. You know what I'm saying? So, like, an honest answer, were you, like, on the start line, like, this is a lock? Or was there some sort of, like, doubt creeping in your head?
No, I think, like, I had zero doubt that I was going to finish. It wasn't going to finish. I went in. Now, you talk about Eastern States, I will always be like, I don't know if I'm going to finish this stupid race in time. But Moab, I was like, again, I was uniquely calm. Like, we were at the start line, and I'm just like, it's going to be a long day. It's going to be a long race. I just kept telling myself, like, I think the advantage when I did the 110 solo, I learned a lot there. This is going to hurt. This is going to be painful. You're going to have downs. You're going to have ups. You need to work through those. And as long as you manage those well, you have a lot of time. You trust your training. And I really didn't have, other than that low point of pain, there was nothing out there that I said, there's no way I'm going to finish this race.
That's what I was telling people. I was telling people, like, pain isn't going to stop you. You know what I mean? Like, nothing nothing outside of a serious injury
A medical,
is
yeah.
going to be what stops you from crossing the finish line.
Yeah, as long as, I mean, I kept, in my mind, I was hydrating well, and as long as I was hydrating well, which in turn means I was peeing a lot. So as long as I was doing that, I felt like that was my number one. Feet, I'll work around. Nutrition, I don't generally eat a lot anyway when I'm doing these races. I ate more in this race than I'd eaten in any race. Like just a burger alone, like that. I never practiced that, and like it was glorious.
Did you specifically like burger at every aid station, or did you try to time them where like you were actually taking a nap afterwards, or?
So I tried to eat before I slept, because that way my body had a chance to produce or process it.
Yeah.
And then when I woke up, I tried to get something else into my system, like an egg sandwich, or if I could, another burger. The one aid station I did that, and I felt the best doing that.
You might talk Ben into doing one of these if he can eat a burger every.
He's been close a couple times of having me make that like switch of like, maybe running 100 miles would be pretty cool.
So for me, and I only was a 10-mile section with Brent at Grindstone, but it did not make me interested in running 100 miles at all. It was like I don't. It was a really fun experience, but it was not convincing to me at all that like, yeah, I want to do this.
Yeah, I think what Don kind of showed me is that like, if you take the 20 hours a week I'm spending swim, bike, and running, and just run,
sure,
you can do some pretty cool shit. You know what I mean? So like, I think like that kind of helped me look at it from that perspective. But man, 240 miles, I don't think sleeping. I don't ever want to sleep outside in the desert for the rest of my life. I did that enough. I don't want to do it anymore. You know what I mean? I've used those rocks as a pillow, man.
Yeah.
Like
Marine days.
Yeah.
A little different, but yeah. One, you're forced to do it, and the other, you're doing it for fun.
Yeah, I wasn't taking in the beauty of the Iraqi desert
right.
for the most part.
Right, like that's no, totally different situation.
Hey, let's pause for a second. I want to just make sure it's still recording and all that fun stuff. And we're 106 in. So.
All right, well, it's just going to be like an hour, 20 or 30.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's cool. Yeah, we kind of decided to like let it go as long as it goes. And
yeah, because last time we had a lot more that we could have kept recording.
Yeah, actually, last time
that calf injury had me so scared. Last time we were talking about it, I was like, "Oh man, like we're gonna talk about this, and then it's not gonna happen, or he's not gonna make it, or we're not gonna get to the start line." Like I was freaking out.
So if we were talking about that, like that was probably the biggest scare of my world. Is all of, like my friends' races got canceled, and then you come to me one day and go, "What happens if Moab gets canceled?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I just had a dream like that night, like somebody kidnapped me, and I went back to the aid station, and they're like, you can't keep going because you got in that car. And then Ben the next day is like, what are you gonna do if it doesn't happen? And I'm like, dude, what the hell?
That's a sign.
Yeah, like that's really when is that all that pre-anxiety was that, but once I got to the start, it was like, that was gone.
Why did you ask that question?
It's a weird thing, right? Like out of the blue.
It was because like a couple of weeks before you were like, I'm not doing this again. You're like, I'm training and I'm doing it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not going to do it again. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I've had a ton of triathletes and athletes not get to the start line, right? Like the COVID years, race gets canceled, weather, whatever. And it's like, oh shit, dude. Like, if you go through all of this and on October 2nd, it doesn't happen, what do we do? Like, are you willing to go through it again? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I like, that is...
All right. Well, thankfully, it did happen. Yeah, it did happen. Yeah.
So,
all right. Let's keep going with Q&A.
All right. So the first question from Patty is,
and who asked this one, Patty?
Yeah, Patty Hall, one of Caroline's athletes. Yep. I can't pronounce her hyphenated other name. Sorry, Patty. It's essentially, obviously, you were dialed in physically, nutritionally, fueling wise. But what did you do anything to mentally prepare? And like, what did you train your mind to be stronger like later in the race? So like, how did you mentally prepare for this race?
I think that was the other races that I've done. So like going back to the COVID year where we did the Eastern States, we fat-assed it by ourselves, and then running the Georgia Death Race, and then actually running that 110 solo. I think I learned more on that solo 110 than I learned in almost all the other races, because you had to manage yourself through that. So you had to get through the pain, you had to get through everything on your own in that race. And I think that's really what that mental aspect of that came from that. But I think it's the other races that I did too that helped me. Like, I don't think if I would have just done Moab as my first ultra, which is pretty awesome, because there are some people out there like, this is my first ultra I'm doing. I'm going.
They let you do that?
Yeah, there's no prerequisite.
Yeah. Wow.
No. So like, I don't know that it would have been the same outcome.
Yeah. That's every time someone asks that question, I always say physically is how you prepare mentally, right? Like, to do an Ironman, like, it's probably good to do sprint, Olympic, half, put the training in. Like, the more physically you train, the more confident you are. Like, if you're a weak swimmer in open water, that starts in the pool, right? It doesn't start in open water. It starts getting confident in the pool, learning how to swim and learning how to swim quickly and swimming on the clock. So, like, what we said, every battle is won before it's ever fought, right? So, like, the more you prepare, the better chance you have, right?
Even, 5-hour trainer rides, right? There's something mentally that does to you. Like, I have a toughness there that
100%
will serve me well on race day. And I'm sure you had workouts or races leading up that, like, maybe that 110 solo, like, you developed a toughness there that, like, this is going to carry through to the race.
Yeah, and it's not sitting there Indian style with your eyes closed meditating, right?
No.
Like, not right. Like, it's not like. That is something that if you do instead of go for a run, you're doing a disservice to your mental preparation.
Great.
All right, next one. Kyle actually asked a couple good ones here, and I know the answer to this one, but it's a good story. How long have you had your sights set on this race?
Back when I was out of shape, and Kerry Ward came out with the first Moab YouTube video. So I was on the treadmill trying to get in shape, and I saw that video of Kerry, and he showed Jacob's Ladder, which, if you've never been out to Moab and did Jacob's Ladder, it's the scariest thing in the world. I have a pre-picture, a picture going down, and then where I came from picture, and you literally come down a cliff, and you're going down like this. One wrong step and you tumble and you're over. But
like off an edge or down the path?
No, it's a straight down weedy path. Like you're literally, one of the guys I was going with took a wrong turn, and I'm like, dude, you got to come back here because you're going the wrong way. And he looked over, he's like, oh yeah, thank you, man, appreciate it. But when we got to the bottom, you were literally like, it's a cliff. And you would not know that Jacob's Ladder was there, and there was no running down it, in my opinion. But I'm sure there's elites that do. But there was no chance in my world that I was running down that. But anyways, go back. Yeah. It literally was just watching Kerry's video of it. I was like, if I get in shape enough one day, that's the one I want to do.
Yeah. So like, you saw that, and you immediately thought in your mind, this is attainable. And how I know you did.
Yeah, I did. I know you did. Yeah, it was like, if I'm in shape enough, I think I could finish that. And
how long ago was that?
That's quite a while ago. I don't.
11 years?
It's at least, somewhere in there. No, I think this is only their maybe 8th year of running Moab.
Okay.
That is such an important statement, because at that moment in your life, you could not have finished that race.
There's no chance.
You know what I mean? So like, people see these things and they're like, well, I could never do this. Well, spend 8 years of your life training, right? If you really want to do it, spend the time training. Like, I could never do an Ironman. Yeah, you can. You know what I mean? Like, maybe like something physically or your age will eventually get you where you can't do it, right? But spend 8 years training and see how much you can accomplish.
Well, we had this conversation before, right? With Ironman, like somebody we were talking to, I said to them, anybody can do an Ironman, right?
I believe that.
And that person was an Ironman athlete too, and was almost like offended and said, you're diminishing your own accomplishment because I've done an Ironman. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, anybody, unless you have a physical disability, and even some of those clearly have finished it, anybody can do it. Now, not anybody will do it,
Yep.
right? There's a difference. But if you have the discipline and put in the work, like, I think that a huge percentage of our population can finish an Ironman.
I agree.
I guess the same goes
It's
true
the same
for
for-
Moab.
it's the same for Moab.
For me, it's like kind of mind-boggling.
But you have to put the work in.
Yeah.
Like you can't just go on race day and have walked 30 miles.
Right.
Like that's not going to be enough.
Yeah.
I figured it out a month into training with Don when Training Peaks was all green. And it wasn't easy, right? But like he didn't miss anything. He did extra shit. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, he got it. Like he can do it. It's just having the will to do it and wanting to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you don't wake up early, if you sign up for a race and you don't wake up early and go to the pool, you just don't want it.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry, it's black and white. Like you just don't want to do it, and that's okay. You don't have to do it, right? But if you don't want it, you don't want it.
Yeah. You gotta want it bad enough to put the work in.
Yeah.
And there's an expectation too, I think. Like if you're expecting to win it, and you're not putting the work in, you're not going to win it.
Right.
And then sort of joking with Ben, like, hey, I think I could win this thing at Moab. And then you look at who's in the race and you're like, oh, there's no chance. Those guys have been winning these 200 races. It is sort of foolish too. Like, I just turned 50. Have not been running 200s ever. And I did have a little bit of that. Okay, so if it's a perfect world, this is where I think it could be. But I mean, the guy who won did it in 69 hours. And there was the guy I thought was going to win came in second. Mm-hmm. So, but he ended up winning the Triple Crown. But if you're not putting the work in, the elite athlete work, then there's no chance that you're going to win.
So what's your biggest, this is another question from Kyle, but it goes with that well. What's your biggest takeaway from this race? I mean, it can be like biggest takeaway athletically or just biggest takeaway as a human being, right? Because I think what you just said is so important for athletes. Like, if you want to do something, spend 8 years doing it.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like, that is my biggest takeaway. Where, like, truly nothing is impossible if you want it enough.
Sure. I think the biggest training really was with you. Like, that's when I got serious. Like, yeah, if I can do this race, I wanted to, but when it came down to, okay, you're in the race, like I went there last year to volunteer, and I was like, yeah, okay, we're going to do this race, and I put my name in, got drawn. It was go time. Like, it was that, like, yeah, I put in some base work because I was doing other things and I've done other races, but it wasn't until like I was actually in Moab and I was like, okay, I'm in now, I need to do this. And that's when we picked it up.
Yeah.
Like it was, I had some base, but it wasn't until you and I started that it was like, okay, this is real now.
Yeah. And it got real quick.
Yeah. Very quick.
Yeah, like there was no shying away from hard work right out of the gate.
No.
I guess this is a good one. How did you, and I have my own opinion on this, just like watching you, how did your balance in your life look like? Work, family, training? Like, how did you balance those things in your life and every other obligation you have?
Well, something has to get sacrificed because it's impossible to put in huge volume and something get missed. So that was the conversation I had with my family was, hey, we didn't do many trips together. We didn't do many things as a family together, but we did manage family time. If you see that the lawn needs mowed, it would be great if you jumped on the mower and did the mowing for me. Or, if laundry isn't done, it'd be great if you threw that in the washer. So like when I come back, it's not like totally crazy. But the 4 o'clock thing, sometimes it doesn't work in my case. But if I could get out there at noon and get my run in, I got my run in, and that was, I think, getting the workouts in is important. Maybe not necessarily always when you do it, but if you're not doing it, then you don't want it. But and weekends, like putting in the big miles in the weekend, you just have to have a clear understanding with your family. Like, hey, this is, prior to doing this, like, hey, this is what it's going to take. And I think the work-life balance went okay. So I don't know how else to answer that, but it went okay for us because we did have an expectation and we talked about it. Was it perfect? No. Sometimes I'd come back from a big run and it's like, oh, I got to go to the yard yet, or this needs done, or the oil in the car needs changed, or
yeah.
But you do it, and then you go and you take the rest of the day off because you're just exhausted.
Yeah. To your credit, you saw a lot of soccer games.
Mm-hmm.
You went fishing a lot, right? Maybe not as much as you normally do and not as much as you would want to, but there were times where you would go to Bloomsburg and run all day and then watch a soccer game.
Field hockey.
Field hockey, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Nat will be upset with you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. So, like, you did do those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you weren't this just, like, absentee. But what you hit on is important. Like, that balance isn't 365 days a year, right? Like, as a family, sometimes you're balancing Moab.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're balancing family obligations. Sometimes it's work. Like, it's not 33.3% of those things 100% of the time.
Yep.
Right? So, like, as a family, the several of you decided we just now is that in college. So, like, I just think of
it's just three of us now.
Yeah. The three of you decided, this is what we're focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said to you one time before, like, man, my dad and I have such a good relationship. But my dad never ran 240 miles, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a pretty cool thing to, like, watch your father accomplish. Like, that can't be, overstated, right? Like, that is such a cool accomplishment.
We should have Jake to ask because that would be the clear answer. I never had a dad that did any of this stuff either.
Yeah.
So there was nobody for me to ask. It was just
right.
trial by fire, honestly.
Yeah, and to your credit, so you always need family buy-in when you are going to do something big like this. I know from my own personal situation, and sounds like absolutely the same for you. But to your credit, also, you were running super early too a lot of times as well, right? Where you're getting up and you're out there at 5 a.m.
So, weekends.
Yeah. So in some ways you're sacrificing, you probably go to bed pretty early too, but sacrificing sleep so you can go get that big mileage run in and still see that
Correct.
Field hockey or soccer game in the afternoon. And those are the sacrifices that you make if you want to do these type of events. If you have a family, I guess if you're single, you just can, if you're like Ben, you can just do it whenever. Yeah. But no kids. But yeah, I mean, you have to plan it, and I mean, I know it's no different for me. Like when I've done long distance races, like you figure out a way to fit the training in around your family events too.
And your kids, they did a bunch of my strength workouts too, right? And like they did some hikes and runs with you too.
Oh, they did stuff with me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So like
That's
that just gives you the buy-in. And your wife ran with you several times and hiked, you know what I mean? And she runs herself. So like it just enhances that buy-in of like, this is the thing we're doing as a family. Like they deserve, to get a belt buckle too.
They did, yeah.
Right?
They deserve something.
Yeah, totally. More than just a thank you and like thanks for like taking time off work and time off school to do this crazy shit.
I'm not sure about taking time off of school. It wasn't a reward. But I mean, he had homework. Like that was one of the one of the good things about easy things for us with Jake is he did his work diligently while we weren't running. So like he did as much as he could before the shit hit the fan. And now when we came back, he had like a little bit of an essay to write, what was left of that. So, he did his own sort of thing, endurance and preparation, so that he could be ready for whenever we needed him or I needed him. Awesome. So that was really cool to watch him progress into that. So,
would you do it again?
Moab?
Yeah.
Oh God, no. So, but let me caveat that. So they are. Would I do another 200? Yes. So, but it has to be a mountain. Like, so there's an event she's working on is in Colorado. Is a Colorado 200. I would really enjoy suffering up and down a mountain. versus flat running
I know,
and the
I know,
desert,
yeah.
forget it, because like I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And Rhoda had all of the mountain stuff, and as much as we just grinded, and I think that's probably, you asked me about my low point. There was a low point there with Rhoda that I don't know what I was doing. I wasn't mad, I wasn't angry, but there was like a comment I made about babysitting, and it literally was so dumb. She was looking out for me, and mentally I just kept thinking like, she stop and look, and I'm keeping up. It's just like, hey, you don't need to babysit me. I'm doing good. We're doing great. And then as soon as I said it, I was like, oh, you're such an idiot. Hey man, I'm sorry that came out. I don't know. That was just my inner being, just not being myself at the moment. Like that was probably the second lowest point of all of it. But from that point, it was like, we just kept cruising. I forgot about that point, but.
So not would you do it again a second time, but would you do it again? Like if you could rewind the clock, would you go through all this training and prep?
Oh yeah. Like I think it was well worth that one time. That's that M&M. If you have one shot, you're going to take it. Yeah, like, I would take that one shot again. Taking this one shot at Moab, I would do that one shot again. Knowing now what I didn't know then, definitely would have done a little different preparation, but not a whole lot different.
So what's next?
For me, it's the year of being 50.
Yep.
So I have the...
Yeah, and when was your birthday? I know.
September 11th.
Okay.
So like this was, I did the hardest race first, and now it's all mixed up.
And now we go backwards, right?
Yeah, now but it's, August will be the 100-miler, because it's impossible I can't find a way to do the 240, 100 all the way down to a 1-miler. So it's all mixed up, so.
You're doing the 1 mile on the treadmill?
Yeah, the last 9-10 is going to be a 1 mile on the walking on the treadmill. Yeah.
And what's the 100-miler? In next August? Is that what you said?
It's this coming August, yeah.
And what race is that?
That's the one I don't like. Eastern States.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Eastern States 100. For some reason, every time I'm there, like it's funny. Like Moab didn't beat me up as much as Eastern States does. Even on a fun training run, like I just get, for some reason, that area just beats me up. So I'm annoyed by it, and I want to be able to beat it. So I know we did a fat ass there, but it's not the same as actually running the race on race day. So.
Awesome. Well, anything else that I don't know, post race that is thoughts worth sharing?
I will say Don wrote a really, really good race recap. We'll put it in the description or the comments below on the video. It's like 7 pages.
It's 9 pages.
It's well worth a read at least one time, if not 2 or 3 times, to get all the details, and it's way more detailed than we could get into.
Especially if you're considering doing a race, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, and just like it's funny reading it and knowing Don, it really gets into like the inner workings of his brain, and it's kind of it's good to like listen to this and get to know him and then read it, because it's like, I don't know if you can feel how super detail oriented Don is when like you're saying ballpark the mileage, and he's like, yeah, it was 153.3 miles. He can't say it was 155, right? Like it's that specific of a race report. It's really, really good.
Awesome. Well, thank you for spending time with us. Amazing accomplishment. Like something that, you carry with you the rest of your life. And I hope you wear the belt buckle and show it off to people very proudly at plenty of different races.
A couple times. And then it gets put into a picture frame and my bib. Like all the significant ones, that's what I do. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great working with you, Ben. It's going to be weird not having that, because you get to know you, and the joy of having you as a coach was something that will be missed at this point, because unfortunately, not running Moab.
Yeah.
But if I do a Colorado, if that pops up, I definitely definitely would love to have you back as a coach.
It was a really cool experience for me too, and like we could do a whole nother episode on this, but like coming from, again, like not an ultra runner, right? But it just shows that like it's so important to find somebody you trust to work with and somebody you get along with, and like just because like someone's athletic biography or coaching resume says they walked a 50K doesn't make them some coach of ultra runners, right? Like you need to find somebody who you can buy in and trust the training,
Yep.
right? And like again, somebody like I thought we did a good job of being very adaptable, right? Kind of like having this understanding of this is my role in this part of the race. This is your role as an athlete. We don't intermix the other things.
Agreed.
Right? Like we did a very good job of keeping it kind of like staying in our lane,
Yep.
knowing our role. And yeah, there's a lot of things I would tweak if we had to do it again. I still would cut the strength work back as we got closer to the race. But there, if it was up to Don, he'd run 100 miles the week before Moab. But yeah, I mean, it's really a testament to you as an athlete to have the trust in me and like the program we put together. You know what I mean? So like, I couldn't thank you enough for working with me, and like, it's definitely one of the best coaching accomplishments on my end. Like Ironman is almost like, here's the recipe, right? But here it was like, holy shit! It was cool. It was scary, but it was cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congrats again, Don.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congrats to you, Ben. Helping kind of guide Don along the training, and thanks for everyone for watching. We know this was a long one, but it was a lot to unpack. Probably we still didn't really get to a lot of it,
yes.
But if you have more questions, we'll help you find Don, and
Sure.
and you can buy him a really big cup of coffee, and he can give you all the details from Moab. We'll have some more videos. We plan to shoot more over the winter. Hopefully connect with Rich after Kona, and a couple other athletes that
that'd be cool.
have done some great races recently. So thanks again for watching.
Thanks.
All right, cool. Hopefully it's still recording. 1:30.